Hi everybody, welcome back to the Democrat and Chronicle Education Podcast, and I guess videocast.
Video too. Yeah.
Casting in general. I'm Justin Murphy, education reporter, with Bryant, our education columnist, and as you may have heard, we've got a new education boss in town on the federal level. It looks like Donald Trump's education secretary, Betsy DeVos, will be approved as the nominee. And Eric, as we know, there's basically the two camps of school reform. There's those who kind of want to make the existing districts better by supporting them more in various ways, and there are those who say those aren't working. We need to divert resources elsewhere. And Betsy DeVos, I think, is clearly one of those latter people. She's been a big proponent of charter schools, even vouchers. From what you've read about her position, where do you think she stands on some of these things that affect us?
Well, I believe she's called public education, quote, a dead end. So it's pretty clear that she is not interested in fixing problems in public education. Rather, she's interested in allowing charter schools, in some cases for-profit charter schools, to start from scratch and take resources and students from the so-called failing public schools. So one of the proposals that was on the Donald Trump campaign website was to provide vouchers for all students who are in underperforming schools of about $12,000 a year, the idea being that they could take their money and go to a school that was better suited for them.
Yeah, and like a lot of things, we don't know everything about what his plans are, but I mean, the idea is that it would be like a food court. Like your mom gives you $20 and you can go and eat whatever you want.
Right.
The thing I don't really understand about how this would work, I mean, so you'd think Rochester, being a poor, underperforming district, is a prime recipient for these vouchers. Our kids would be great. But I mean, think about it. If a kid in Rochester who's smart and eager to learn, just like so many of them are, wants to go somewhere else, it's not like there's an easy place to put an exodus of 15,000 kids. You know, say you've got 15,000 kids that want to leave. I'm just making up a number. Our selective parochial and private high schools don't have the space or necessarily the interest in taking all those kids.
Right, and the voucher would be meaningless if there were no schools that were willing to take them. And if I live in the city and I want to take my voucher to Brighton or Webster or Pittsford, are they allowed to reject me? Or
right, we haven't quite gotten to that point in the greater Rochester community where those schools just accept anybody who comes at any point. And eventually what you're going to end up with, and people make this skimming argument with charter schools and urban suburban, and there are meaningful counter arguments in those cases. They say, well, everybody needs to sign up for some kind of school, and we're not only taking the best kids, and that may well be the case. For vouchers, it might be a different thing. You might be left with a pool of extremely difficult kids in the Rochester City School District, or any poor urban district across the country, that are just really hard to help out. And that doesn't even get you to the fact that, as one of the senators was saying in the confirmation hearings, kids in rural areas, it's not like there's 13 private schools down the street that they can choose from. There might be one school in 50 miles. So it's
right. So there's a lot of uncertainty, I think, in terms of what they're going to do on the federal level and how New York State is going to react. Because New York State, under the proposal that's on the website, states would have a choice of accepting the federal voucher money, and then they could match it or not match it. So New York could actually opt out of the program, and then I don't know if there would be any sort of penalties or ramifications. So it's really just a lot of uncertainty that we're looking at.
I think it's safe to say we're skeptical.
Yeah.
We this morning, Rosa, the Board of Regents Chancellor, was here at the Democrat and Chronicle meeting with the editorial board, and we were both there. And a lot of people have been having the same conversation we're having now. What is it going to look like? What does vouchers mean? Charter schools, all these kinds of things. And in her, I think, main takeaway for people was, everybody just calm down. We don't know what's going to happen yet. So, but it's interesting, another point that she made, Ann Andrew Brown, the Vice Chancellor, is that the federal education law that just got passed, ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, was pretty intentionally took a lot of power away from the federal Department of Education. So even if she has some of these big ideas, or Donald Trump has these big ideas, she's not in the same position to implement them as, say, Arne Duncan or John King was just a little while ago.
Right. And they were also saying that as a result of ESSA, states are going to have a lot more leeway in terms of assessments. And the main thing I took away from that meeting was that we're going to be looking at less of a sort of a test-based system and more of a system that is taking into account portfolios and teacher observations and other measures rather than just the sort of shot-in-time testing.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how that plays out. That's certainly been the direction that the rhetoric is moving in. But I mean, first of all, Governor Cuomo still seems pretty committed to a strong testing regimen. And I'll be interested to see how they decide to implement that, and if they truly mean that when they say that we're going to stop testing kids and doing portfolios. Among other things, having a portfolio assessment system is a lot more complicated, I think, because there's so many ground level localized factors. And I think that there would be a worry that you'd get back to where we started 20 years ago before accountability became a thing, which is that the kids in Alabama who don't have, maybe there's not a lot of strong local interest in equity or those kind of things, they do get left behind, and then we have to go back and no child left behind them again.
So hopefully it's not going to be a circle. Hopefully it'll be something where I mean, I don't think they're going to get rid of the tests. I don't see that happening, but
And they didn't say they would totally
and they
get
didn't
rid of the
say,
test.
but hopefully they're going to add in other factors, maybe 50% testing, 25% portfolios. It'll be some complicated system that nobody understands, and then they'll change it again.
Yeah, hopefully it won't be like everything else in the history of education where it just goes in cycles all the time. I will say that the last 2 years we've seen these huge opt-out numbers. I don't see any reason to think that there'll be any less this year. They make some kind of cosmetic changes. Last year the tests were a little bit shorter.
And then you can take as long as you want. You don't have to, there's no time limit.
But I think that even though Betty Rosa is I think a firm member of that segment of the debate in New York, she supports parents' opt-out rights. She said herself that if she had a kid, she would opt them out of the tests. I don't think she's moved things far enough yet that that hundreds of thousands of people across the state are going to say, okay, fine, we'll have our kids take the test now. Right. And at the same time, as Governor Cuomo has been tacking left, who knows, he may become more flexible on that too, but I think opt-outs are here to stay for at least the short term. Is there anything else that you took away from the meeting?
Well, they also expressed at least support in theory for the Great Schools for All mission, which is to try to create a school that would draw a diverse socioeconomic mix of kids from all parts of Rochester. But the problem has been nobody is putting forth any legislation that would facilitate that. So it seemed like they didn't seem committed in the sense that they were going to spearhead or get behind or galvanize, but they seem like if somebody did come forward and create legislation, they might support it, sort of.
Yeah.
So.
And it wouldn't be they're not legislators, so they wouldn't vote on that, but it's hard to judge that sometimes because everybody on every side of the debate always says that we want to make sure that poor kids and children of color are getting an equitable education, and they haven't yet. And we, as people with a strong interest in the Rochester City School District, I think always want to believe people when they say that, whether it's Betty Rosa or Betsy DeVos or anybody else in between. But it ends up being whether they put the policies in place that affect that. We haven't seen those yet. I'm not sure what they look like, but hopefully one of them has a good idea.
Yeah.
We don't know any better than you do. I'm Justin Murphy, education reporter. Erica Bryant, education columnist with the DNC. Keep reading us online and in the newspaper, and we'll be back podcasting again soon.